Right, hello again. It is still Sunday 29th of May, and we shall crack on with another one. And this one is another one from James Goggins of Maverick Drinks, hence the Drinks by the Dram bottles, because that's what they also are part of the company. So this one is Phew rye, but it's actually F.E.W. rye. It's a company that's based in a place called Evanston in Chicago, which is here. And it was set up by a guy called Paul F.E.W. In 2011. Did I say that already? I don't know. Anyway, it was 2011. So it's F.E.W. right. This is what the bottle looks like, and you notice that there are the periods in between each letter, because it's actually the initials of a woman called Frances Elizabeth Willard. And Frances Elizabeth Willard was a leading campaigner in Chicago, which was the home of essentially the kind of birthplace of Prohibition. And she was a leading campaigner at the Temperance Movement. So the distillery that was set up by Paul F.E.W. in 2011 was one of the first, if not the first, that had opened in Chicago or in the Chicago area since Prohibition was lifted. And essentially it was a bit of a kind of fuck you to her in terms of, right, well, you know, let's name it after somebody that kind of screwed the entire industry over back in the day. So the F.E.W. distillery is relatively new, but that's where the name comes from. So they have a bourbon as well, but this is the rye that's been sent, and I can't even get into the damn thing. Come on. Oh, Jesus. Is it? No, it's because it's... There we go. Oh, I think I've taken the whole lot there. There we go. Come on, crack there. Get there in the end. So everything on site in this distillery, everything in this distillery is done on site. So they are not buying in neutral grain spirits or any neutral. They're not buying in alcohol. They're distilling it themselves. The grain is locally sourced. They're bottling on site. It's all done in house. This is, and if you go onto their website, if you look at some of the promotional material about them, it's very much this kind of idiosyncratic craft distillery vibe that they're slightly hipsterish. But they seem to be making a decent fist of it, and I'll be perfectly honest, it's the way a lot of these relatively new distilleries are going. It's all very much craft and tradition and being slightly quirky and cool and this and that and the other. So this is 70% rye, 20% corn and 10% barley. So it's in terms of the age, I don't actually know what the age is. Now the ragtime rye that I'd had just previously was 3.5 years old, and I'm willing to bet this is probably similar. So this is probably 3 to 4 years old, something along the lines of that. It seems to be the general theme of these new ryes that are coming out. Looking at the colour, it's very, very similar to the ragtime that I've just had. It's again a kind of a rich, dark orangey colour. It really reminds me, maybe slightly lighter, slightly thinner almost, but it's a very, very similar hue to what was in the ragtime. But on the nose is quite distinctly different. This doesn't have, it's very interesting having this straight after the ragtime, because having two ryes very similar after the other. And this is 46.5%, so this is 1 and a bit % higher than the ragtime, but this actually smells slightly softer. Now there's a slightly odd, almost vegetal, there's a weird element to this, which is, you could take this the wrong way and think it would be quite unpleasant. There is a slightly odd, and I've rinsed the glass out fully, clean water, the whole lot, so there shouldn't be anything with the glass that's affecting the nose on this. But there really is an odd, there's kind of like orange in there, but it's slightly farmyardy as well. It's really, really unusual. There's sort of a freshness to it, and there's a bit of mint coming through. There's not much pepper, which is kind of what I'd be expecting with a rye whiskey, or kind of spiciness. There is kind of like orange and orange juice and orange peel, but then this weird kind of overtone of, and it's farmyards and not manure, not anything kind of like gross like that, but something weirdly slightly off that's not unpleasant, but it's just a little bit disconcerting. Fortunately, it's not there on the palate, and what there is on the palate is actually really nice. It's a lovely rich mouthfeel to it. This oranginess continues, this kind of orange peel. There's a lovely sugary sweetness to it as well, kind of like a candy floss. There's a very gentle, very soft spice, kind of nutmeg. Yeah, it's like a really soft nutmeg, really sweet nutmeg as well, and really sweet cinnamon. Like cinnamon buns, when you get the like a really rich soft cinnamon bun that's got the icing that's coated over the top. It's really big in America, and I absolutely love the stuff. I can't get enough of the cinnamon rolls that you can get, and it's that sort of element. It's that sugary sweetness of the icing on top, along with the really soft spice of the cinnamon. It's interesting because the ragtime was quite hot, and yet it's a slightly lower alcohol percentage than the F.E.W. This, I really like this. There's a lovely fruitiness to it. There's a lovely sweetness to it. It's a really nice rich mouthfeel. There's very little heat. There's a good finish to it as well. That's really good. I really like that. Unfortunately, I have no idea how much it is in the UK. The Whiskey Exchange appear to have sold out. Master of Malt don't seem to be selling it. It was for sale on Amazon, but they had sold out, and essentially their, what do they call it, their other sellers or whatever they got were selling it for around 55 quid. So I would hazard a guess that it's probably about the same price as the ragtime, so about 40 to 45 quid. And if it is the same price, I personally would go for this hands down. If you want more heat in your rye whiskey, I'd go for the ragtime. But if you're looking for a bit more softer, maybe closer to a bourbon style, in terms of the softer bourbon style, then I would go for this. I really like this. There's a lovely sweetness to it, a lovely richness to it, really well balanced. That's fantastic stuff. That's really good. Yes, I'm going to try and find that if I can. I'd be really intrigued to know what their bourbon's like as well, because if the rye is that good and the bourbon's got more of the characteristics and flavours that I like out of bourbon, being a bourbon drinker myself, that's going to be something really special. Right, a good way to finish off, and very interesting to have two ryes that are quite similar in terms of their breakdown of constituent parts. You know, the Phew was 70-20-10, and the ragtime was, what I've got written down, 72-16 and 12. So very similar in terms of alcohol percentage, constituent ingredients, and yet two totally different types of flavors, flavor profiles going on there. Really interesting, and that's one of the great things about tasting whiskey, if you can, to taste a few in one go. I personally wouldn't do any more than 6 in a row. You start, you know, the alcohol's going to be affecting you, but if you can do 2 or 3 or 4 together of even similar styles, it's really interesting, because if you've not been tasting whiskey for long, or you haven't really been tasting whiskey and you're sort of having it every now and again, but it's like, well, I like that one, but I can't remember what the other one was like. It's really good to sit down and try and get just, you know, and it doesn't need to be a lot. I'm doing 25 mils and that's it. One after the other. Give yourself a drink in between, let your palate settle down, and then go on to the next one. But almost immediately you will start to pick out much more than you would ordinarily if you were just having one on its own, because you start to instantly compare and go, all right, that one's drier, that one's hotter, that one's softer, that one's sweeter, that has this flavour that isn't in there, or that's also got that flavour, and oh right, I now recognise what it is. So yeah, it's always interesting trying something similar but different, one after the other. And yeah, to be honest, out of the two, the F.E.W. wins hands down for me personally. But if you like it a little bit hotter, then I would go for the ragtime. Right, that's me done for tonight. I shall see you in the next one. Cheers.